So let's go to this zip code investors forgot about. It's called Europe. And I'm going to just first show people a money flows chart. If the producer could just pull that onto the screen. This basically shows money flows for Europe were positive for a while. They then went negative a few years ago, had a little positive blip, and then negative for another 3 years. Back to positive year to date. So thanks for sharing the slide. Let's go back to Kevin on screen. So money flows are going into Europe. Kevin, you earlier talked about yourself having allocated more to Europe using OEUR. Share your thoughts on that.
So, the majority of my holdings are in large cap stocks in OUSA, which is the American version of the S&P 500, except it only has about 100 names in there versus 500. I want higher quality names that are growing dividends and do not have issues around their business models. So it's a quality strategy. But instead of just adding more and more to that for the back end of the year, because I had downsized my commercial real estate holdings, generated some cash, and it wanted to put it to work, I decided to actually go to a different zip code in this cycle, and that's Europe. Now, everybody hates Europe and has for a long time for a bunch of reasons that are no longer true, and I'll give you some examples. If you look at very large cap European companies like Roche, like Nestle, these are household names in the US, although they're not American companies, but their products and services, in some cases 50% are sold here. So they're very strong balance sheets in places like Switzerland, in Europe, and in England. And an aggregate of about 50 companies, as you mentioned earlier, none of them are oil companies. That's a touchy issue for some people who do not want to invest in hydrocarbons. But we don't have that problem, no, you are. But the performance is what you have to look at, because there's a few reasons you might consider the markets anticipating some performance in Europe. Number one, if you look at the vaccine index, as I call it, how many people have had 1 and 2 different jabs in the various countries, and you look at France and Germany and England and Switzerland, they've actually done a little better than we have. They have really worked hard to inoculate their populations, and they're ahead of us now. We're not anywhere near 70%. Some of those countries are, and even past that. The Nordic countries, the Swiss, for example, they're very, very conscious of what it's going to take to get the economies back on track. That's number one. Number two, you've got pretty good stimulus packages going in almost every country and the Eurozone itself. So you've got a very accommodative regulator over there as well. Number three, so much of these products are sold in the US anyways, which has a booming economy, and other places in the world. But what I like the best about OUR, the PE ratios in aggregate are significantly less, in some cases 20-25% less than the same counterparty in the US. So, you can't tell me that Roche or Nestle is not a good company vis-a-vis their counterpart in the US, which may be trading at a 22 PE, and these are maybe trading in a 15 to 17 PE. So you're getting a discount. So in aggregate, I see no reason why not to put a 20% weighting in a portfolio across those 50 shares that are held in OEUR. Now, I'm biased when I talk about it, but for me, I use O'Shares. They're a great way to index because they're a quality mandate. But Europe, as you can see by fund flows and performance, is really starting to deliver first time in years.
So you get these companies that are global players. You get them at a discount. They're cheap relative to comparable companies in the U.S., basically because of the zip code where they're headquartered.